Got the camera on again. Tell us a few more stories. I was going to tell you some stories about my pal Dillinger, which is not his real name. Before I get to that, I just want to point out that I am wearing my Diabetes Ain't Sexy t-shirt, which is a t-shirt put out by Rob James, local wrestler, local independent circuit wrestler. 6% body fat is what we call him. And adjust the tilt on this a little bit here. Oh, pardon the close-up. I think that's a little better. If you have diabetes, I'm sorry. I hope I haven't offended you. If you're just some big fat slob that thinks this is offensive, sorry. It's really not directed against you. It's directed against the big fat slobs who go to wrestling, who are always stuffing their faces with cheese and bread and candy, and they don't appreciate Rob James. They don't appreciate what it takes to be a man like Rob James, who only has 6% body fat. I mean, the guy's he's like a god, like a little tiny, miniature version of a god. And he has a great physique. So I just want to say that's what that's about. Hope it doesn't offend anybody. I only had one person that was offended by it, actually, or I think he may have been trolling me. He may have been pretending, but I was with Magenta at the United Noodle, which is this Chinese grocery store that has a deli. We go there because they have tea-boiled eggs and free tea, and we eat in the deli sometimes. And me and Magenta went there, and I was wearing this t-shirt, and this little skinny white guy behind the counter, not even Asian, at the deli, says to me, really serious, that t-shirt offends me. And I said, oh, well, it's not directed at you, it's directed at the big fat slobs that don't appreciate Rob James, who's one of our fine local wrestlers. He's like, oh. But yeah, I'm not sure if he was actually offended. I think he was teasing me. But I'm tired of these videos dividing at the 33-minute mark because I've run a little over. I'm using my timer. I'm going to very strictly use my timer and try not to have that happen again. I don't like videos that are part 1 and part 2, and nobody else does either. So we're going to try not to let that happen again. Try and rein in the long-windedness a little bit with some of these stories. I was going to tell stories about Dillinger today, and I'm going to get to doing some comic geek videos too soon, reviewing movies and comic geek stuff, talking about Batman and all that kind of stuff. But first I wanted to set the table with some of these old stories to just sort of establish who I am, where I'm coming from, and where I got my weird personality and how I became an underground comic artist, which I am, under the pen name Sandez Ray. You can look me up. There's a art page on Facebook, Sandez Ray's Crypt of Underground Art, I believe it's called, something like that. It's my own page, I'm not even sure about the title, but there's tons of art in there if you want to look me up. Or you can look up Robot Jungle Girl, which I put on, or you can look up my, actually go to Rula Cthulhu is your best place to look up art and read lots of stories for free. Rula, R-U-L-A-H, Cthulhu, spelled the same way Lovecraft spelled it, .com, and there you can find lots of my comic stories for free, which you can read for free. I'm not even selling anything on the internet anywhere, so I'm not trying to rope you in to get you to buy something. I have nothing on the internet currently that I'm selling anywhere, so you can read all sorts of my stories for free at rulacthulhu.com. Back to this, and I just killed 4 minutes off my timer, so I better get to the subject of this video. Dillinger and guns. The guy loved guns. He's a great guy. He was a great guy. He's not the sort of guy that would shoot you without a reason, but he did carry a loaded gun, and we were kind of drug dealers together, although we weren't serious about making money. We only sold weed in high school and in some of the years after high school, and I did sell some other things besides weed. I'm not sure if Tom Dillinger ever sold anything besides weed, and he's passed away now, so it's kind of irrelevant. But we were only in it for the smoking and the partying. We were in it to provide ourselves with a steady source of weed that we didn't have to pay for. We didn't make a lot of money. We used to pay $200 for a half pound of Mexican weed, and we'd sell there were 8 ounces in a half pound, so we'd sell the ounces for $40 each. So 40 times 8, that's like $320, and so we'd make $120 cash profit between us, but we'd be keeping an ounce each. So that right away is subtracting $80 out of our potential money. So that means that there's only that reduces it to like a $40 cash profit, which we would supplement a little by taking one of the ounces and rolling it into dollar joints, and we could usually get about $60 joints out of a $40 ounce, and then we'd split those. We'd take like 30 each and sell those around the school and to our friends, and that would give us a steady cash flow from the joint money. So yeah, we weren't in it for the money, we were in it for the partying. I did make some pretty good cash selling the LSD and some of the other things, but it wasn't quit your job or get rich kind of cash. I mean, I used to buy 100 hits of blood-R acid for $200 and then sell them for $3 each. So that's $100, on 100 hits, but you can't sell it if you're not out there on the street corner peddling. You can't sell 100 hits overnight. I mean, it takes a while for your friends and associates to go through 100 hits of acid, and I wasn't out there pushing it to anybody. I wasn't looking for new customers. I was just in high school, and I knew a lot of people, and drugs were popular then, so just selling to friends and associates and other people around the school and around the neighborhood, it took a while to get rid of 100 hits, so it wasn't like any big money was coming in. Anyhow, checking the timer here, trying to get back to the guns. I better start with the first time I went hunting, which was my first real shooting experience. My dad didn't believe in hunting. I mean, he didn't have anything against it. I mean, he grew up in the South on the farm in Missouri, and he went hunting. They went hunting. He didn't have anything against it. He just didn't ever invest the time or the money to go with us kids, and he didn't do a lot of things with us kids, but that's a whole different story. But so I had never been hunting. I didn't own a gun as a kid. When I was a teenager, I got invited hunting because a kid who grew up behind me, I'm going to give you his real name, I usually use fake names, but I have nothing incriminating to say about this guy, so I'll just tell you his real name was Steve. When Steve used to live behind me, we were born just a month or two apart, and so we were thick as thieves throughout the entire growing up process until he moved during the 4th grade to a few miles away. But when you're a 4th grader and you can't go, it's just a few miles, but when you can't go on your own, that's like moving to a different world. I mean, you really basically don't see that person anymore. And I didn't hook back up with Steve till I was in high school. We wound up going to the same high school. So in the meantime, I had developed this friendship with Dillinger, who I had met through the church my mom went to. And it's kind of funny that we were both such juvenile delinquents, because we did meet in church choir, which both of our parents dragged us to and made us participate in for a year or two when we were much younger. And then I hadn't really known Dillinger in grade school, or he went to a different grade school, he went to a different junior high, I think. Or maybe he didn't, but I didn't really know him in junior high. Got back together with him in high school and became tight and thick as thieves again as with Dillinger in high school, just like I had been with Steve as a child. And so they reached a point where Steve, who always went hunting with his dad and his brothers, said we should all go hunting. When Steve, that first year in high school, he was sort of hanging around with me and Dillinger, and then we kind of drifted back apart, and because he wasn't interested in being the kind of drug-abusing delinquent that we were. He was more of an occasional beer and occasional toke of weed type of guy. So, but there was a time when Steve and me and Dillinger and one other guy all went hunting together. And I didn't have a gun, but Dillinger had extra guns, so he took a shotgun and he gave me a .22 rifle, and Steve and the other guy had shotguns, and we got up at like 4 o'clock or something, and we drove up there and up north to where we were going to go hunting, and we were well provisioned with like a case of beer, and everybody had a bag on them, and we all had cigarettes, so we were ready to get loaded and go shoot the shit out of something. And we went up there. I remember we went through this one small town, and it was still dark, and there was like a diner there, and there were all these pickup trucks and cars all pulled over to get their breakfast and coffee of guys that were going hunting. And literally every guy walking in there, this is like 5:30 in the morning, every guy walking in there, and it's still dark out, is wearing like an orange vest or fatigues or something. They're all clearly dressed for hunting. And there's a stoplight right in front of the place, and we're pulling up, and there's a stoplight, and the light's about to flick back to green, and we're stopped there, and there's all these swarms of people just going, because it's the only place open for like miles around, and it's like a traditional stopping place, I guess. And somebody says, roll down the window, or no, Steve I think said, roll down the window. And so they roll down the window on that side, and he leans over from the driver's side and yells just as loud as he can, fucking truck hunters! Fucking duck hunters, in the most angry tone of voice. Like he was really mad. And like 20 guys' heads swivel around. Like, who the hell said that? I'll kick his ass. Then we all had a good laugh, and the light changed, and we drove away. But, and I was like, why do you do that? Why do you have to do that? Why do you have to just antagonize people? But at the same time, who was I to say that to him, juvenile delinquent, vandal, drug dealer that I was? I mean, I don't know, who was I to criticize, right? So, anyways, we go hunting, and first thing we do is we smoke some weed and drink some beer. How else are you going to start a day of hunting, right? And then we're walking through the woods, and Steve's an experienced hunter, so he's like, we should spread out, we shouldn't all walk together. And so we spread out, and we're like a good 20, 30 yards between each of us. And so then as we're walking through the woods, this rabbit flushes. I'm like on the end, and there's another guy, and then there's Steve, and then there's Dillinger. This rabbit flushes and runs between Steve and the other guy, like splits the distance between them. And the guy to Steve's right pulls up his shotgun and is like following it on the ground, and Steve is right there, and he's like, don't shoot! He yells at him, don't shoot, right? But too late, the guy takes a shot at it when it's right between them, and literally so close to Steve's legs and feet that literally dirt flew up and hit Steve in the face. That's how close it was. And he's like, you dumb shit, you could have shot me. That's a shotgun. You could have blown my foot off, you idiot. And the guy's like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't think. It's like, okay, So then we thought, well, instead of spreading out, maybe it might be safer if we bunched up a little. It'd be a little harder to find the animals, but it might be safer for all of us if we just stuck together a little bit. So we bunched up a little bit more. And we came to a place that we thought, we came up on this lake, because Steve had been up there hunting before, and he said if you hang out at this one spot, the ducks would come and land on the lake, and we could shoot some ducks. That was our goal. It was fall. It was duck hunting season. We weren't looking for a deer or anything. We were looking for ducks. And we settled down by the lake, and of course, to be a good hunter, you have to sit there for a while and wait for everything to settle down around you. So, of course, we took the opportunity to smoke a little more weed, drink a little more beer, which we were packing with us, and we didn't want to carry all that beer back, so we were just packing it everywhere. Everybody had some on them, and we wanted to drink some and get rid of it, leave the cans in the forest like good hunters. But so we sat there by this lake for a long time, and the ducks just weren't coming. So we got up, got restless, started walking around again. Of course, it might have been the perpetual haze of weed and cigarette smoke that was keeping them away. I don't know, or maybe we were talking too loud or something. But so we wandered around, and there were no leaves on the tree. At this point, no leaves on the trees, and because it was fall. And finally, we came to this one tall tree, and Steve says, "Look at that up there. That's a porcupine." And sure as shit, right in the top of this tall tree, there was like this roundish, oval sort of blob of some kind of animal sitting up there. I didn't know how he could tell it was a porcupine, but he could tell. And then we're like, should we shoot it? And we're like, hell yes, let's shoot it. What the hell, we're out here to shoot something. And Steve stuck up for me, because I guess we were childhood pals, and he's like, let Jay shoot it. He's never shot anything. So I pulled up my .22 rifle and drew a bead on it, and that .22 must have been sighted in really well, because I squeezed off 3 shots, and all 3 of them hit it. I could see the shots hit it. Apparently it had like dirt and dust caked on the bottom, so when the shots went right through the center of its torso, I could see little poofs, poof, poof, poof. of the shots hitting it, and I could see that it was shot, and that thing, I swear to God, it was hit 3 times with 322 shells, and it fell and hit a branch, and it fell and hit another branch, then it fell and hit another branch, and I'm doing that so you can't see it, branch, 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 it's like this all the way down, and then it fell and hit the ground, then it turned over and started to walk away. And we're like, holy shit, that thing is like some inhuman robot. That thing is amazing. How is it walking away? It's been shot 3 times and it just fell out of this tall tree and hit every branch on the way down. So it turned to walk away, and Steve ran over there and he's like, I'll get it, with his shotgun, just like right on top of it, like mafia style execution, just right on top of it, bam, shoots it with the shotgun, and now it's finally dead. Now we're like, what are we going to do with it? What the hell do you do with the porcupine? You know what, those quills are sharp. And Steve was like, you know what, it was a beautiful, big porcupine. And Steve was like, I'm going to take this to a taxidermist and have it mounted. We're like, okay, fine, have it mounted. Take it, but, the car is like 1.5 miles back. I mean, we were part of the way back from where the lake was, but we weren't all the way back. The car's still like 1.5 miles away. And we're like, yeah, well, you got to carry it. That thing's covered with sharp quills. How are you going to carry it? You're never going to get it back to the car. He's like, oh yeah, I can get it back to the car. Well, you could have one of us could have taken off a shirt, and we could have tried to carry the shirt. The thing is, those quills are sharp, and that thing would have torn that shirt to shreds. And it might have even torn it to the point where it would have fallen through before we got there. So nobody really wanted to do that. We had nothing to carry it with. So Steve was able to grip it, and the only place it doesn't have quills is on the pads of its feet. Right? So Steve was able to grip it with his fingertips, basically, by the pads on the bottom of its feet and by the top edge of its foot there. And he was able to grip it by its foot in such a way so that he could barely carry it. And then he had to hold it like 2 feet out to the side from his body. He had to hold his arm out so that the quills wouldn't be slashing his leg every time he took a step. Well, as you can imagine, it's very hard to carry. I mean, this porcupine, I don't know what it weighed, but it was heavy. It was a big, beefy porcupine, and it had to be at least 10 pounds. And to carry it gripped by the pads of the feet, basically, between 2 fingers, sort of gripped like that, and then to hold it away from your body and walk with it, even if you're stone cold sober, would be very difficult. And he was having a very hard time carrying it. Had to constantly put it down, change his grip, switch hands. And by the time he got to the car, his first couple of fingers and his thumb on both hands were poked full of little holes. But we did get it to the car, and he did manage to throw it in the trunk. Finally, through sheer determination and grit, he managed to get that thing back to the car. And threw it in the trunk. He did ultimately get it taxidermied, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful mounted porcupine. I saw it a couple times. But so then we threw the porcupine in the trunk of the car and went back out for a while, and we wandered and we wandered and we wandered, and we're wandering and wandering and wandering, and we're not seeing shit. And why would we? I mean, the animals had to hear us coming, right? We were all getting a little loose by then, and we drank most of the beer that we bought by this time. And we were running low on supplies and getting tired of wandering through the forest, smoking and joking, and finally we were just about ready to go back, and we're like, damn, Naylor here is the only one that got to shoot anything. And I think it was Steve that said, you see those 2 birds over there? They were like these 2 innocent songbirds just perched on a branch just about maybe 30-40 feet away, just sitting there. And he said, why don't we just all shoot those birds and see what's left of them, see if we can hit them from here. And just for the fuck of it, we all said, okay, let's shoot those birds. And we lined up like a firing squad, and we all said 3, 2, 1, fire. Someone counted us down, and there were 3 shotguns there in my .22, and we all lined up on a bird, and we all fired. And we ran over there to find what was left, and those poor birds were completely disintegrated, obliterated. we did not find actually any pieces of those birds except for feathers. We found feathers. There might have been some pieces left. I don't know where they were, probably stuck to a tree, another 20 yards further down. But I don't know where those, if there were pieces of meat left sticking together, I don't know what happened to them. But, so yeah, that was the execution of a couple of innocent songbirds for no good reason. But, so then we headed back to the car, and we're going home. We hung out in the forest, we got wasted, we shot at a few things. We almost had a tragic accident, almost blew a guy's foot off, and that was a pretty full day of hunting for us. We're just come back into the clearing where we parked, because we parked in this, there's a dirt road and there's a big clearing there, a big field, natural field, and before you get into this one part of the forest. And we were parked on the edge of the clearing, and we came out of the woods at the opposite edge where there was a path made by hunters, or there was a deer path maybe. And we just got starting to walk around, we walking across the clearing, got about 100 yards across the clearing, and we heard the sound of a couple of ducks flushing out of the bushes or whatever behind us, And I'm not sure if there was a bit of lake back over there, if it was actually close to the lake, or if they were up on the shore for some reason. I'm not sure what the reason is, but we heard these birds flush out of the bushes behind us. And I'll be damned, Dillinger swung around from, here's this guy that's been drinking and smoking all day. He swung around, putting up his shotgun as he turned around, and followed the duck as it flew, as he's swinging around, and bam, one shot, and hit one of those ducks from like 100 yards as it was flying. When he had been walking the other direction, when he heard it flush, he spun around, tracked it, shot it, it fell from the sky. One shot, one duck. And we all stood there with our jaws hanging open, going, oh my God, that was the best fucking shot that any of us had ever seen in our lives. We were like, oh, how the hell did you shoot that duck? And we ran over there and we found the duck. It was a dead duck. It had been hit clean through the center of its little body, little torso. So, so we threw that duck in the trunk with a porcupine and went back home. So yeah, that was my first hunting trip. Or I intended to get more into the stories of Dillinger with his pistol and some of his other gun exploits, but I can see that I only have 5 minutes left on the timer, so I'm going to separate this into 2 videos, and then that way it'll give me have time to really get into the rest of it. So I'm just going to call this my first hunting trip video. There's my 5-minute warning, see? And I'm going to separate this right here. So part 2 will be called My Friend the Gunslinger, or something like that. And this will be the first hunting trip. I'm going to turn this off and start over.